Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Open Tools channel. Today I'm joined by Sai Krishna from TrueFoundry, where he works closely with companies building and deploying AI systems at scale. Sai, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks for having me over. Glad to be here.
Sai, I think a lot of people in AI right now are kind of in the phase of using ChatGPT instead of Google, experimenting with workflows, trying different tools. But once companies actually try to deploy AI at scale, things apparently get complicated very fast. So today I wanted to talk about what's happening behind the scenes with AI governance, infrastructure, MCP, model management, and where enterprises are struggling right now. So, Sai, my first question to you is most people listening are probably using ChatGPT every day, but they're not technical. What's happening behind the scenes in enterprise AI that regular users don't see?
Yeah, I think every company right now that we work with at TrueFoundry is part of our forward deployed engineering initiatives and also as part of installing the platform itself. The common pattern that we're trying to observe is that at the moment, every company wants to define ROI of the AI usage within the company itself. I think we are all past the chat GPT phase now. I think we want to use AI, we want real value out of it. We also are past of the POC phase now. And every enterprise is right now working towards how can we govern, how can we scale, how can we define, and how can we maintain AI as a part of our real systems and not just get stuck at POCs. I think everyone heard this thing where a lot of POCs don't even end up in production, which is around AI. And then right now, everyone is trying to sort of get value out of it, trying to set up tools, buy platforms that will help them get there. Most of the times, enterprises are working towards that. And also, data has always been messy. The number one problem that we see with enterprises is that the data that they have is not agent ready or LLM ready or AI ready, whatever you want to call it. Um, like getting the data up to and the state where they can be part of agentic systems is also one thing that we see enterprises working towards.
Okay, that's a great answer. And Sai, what changes when a company goes from employees using AI to the company actually running on AI?
Um, Companies again, like I said, working in POC phase where we're just trying to define what a problem statement, how a problem statement can translate to a real system within a large enterprise. Moving away from that phase to a real phase, you would want to put in systems that will help you track costs, track LLM calls, make sure that you are working with the best LLM possible. You see models coming out every day. So the change that we see is that when you go to production, it's treated as just another production system, along with one more dimension added to the whole system, which is tracking LLM cost. Previously, we used to see number of API calls, number of how is my system ready for scale? If a marketing campaign goes viral, are we ready for that virality, the spike in traffic? Same things are being applied to LLM usage as well. We see people tracking token cost, token usage. How can we switch from big models to smaller models? Can we self-host stuff? So the mindset is also changing from working and building um, traditional deterministic systems where the same input gives the same output to somewhat experimental mindset where you have chat systems that may not give you the same output when given the same input like 10 times in a row. So there's fundamental shift in mindset to become way more experimental than before. New dimension got added to tracking the production systems where you track LLM usage and token usage. There's changes in user experience as well that we see a lot of times when you go from POC stage to production stage. And then all of these call for like one central layer of like tracking and governing the whole traffic.
Okay, and you mentioned before about governance being a really important thing right now. So, what does AI governance actually mean in simple terms?
Well, if you go back to 2010s, like early time when cloud came into the picture, when people moved away from server farms to getting becoming cloud first, you saw a new pattern that emerged, which is called API gateway, where you would want to keep track of all the API requests within the organizations and API requests going out of the organization to third-party service providers. That was very, very important because you wanted one place to track, put in policies for security, very important for any company to stay compliant, and also make sure that they can track usage and therefore allocate budgets accordingly. Remember, like big enterprises are like collection of hundreds of startups within one enterprise, so you would want to make sure that budgets are allocated correctly and the traffic is controlled. ChatGPT movement happened in 2022, late 2022, and everyone wanted to use LLMs as part of their systems. Now, like cut to 2026, almost every system that is being built at least one discussion happens around using LLM as part of the solution. Now, governance in the AI era would be around how do I make sure that the new dimension that got added, which is LLMs and the artificial intelligence part of the whole system, gets tracked, governed, and no security issues creep in. How does the company stay compliant? How can I ensure that employees are not getting access to data that they're not supposed to get access to? And how do you ensure that the customers that are using your applications are drawing value out of it and they're not abusing the systems? All of these things call for one governance layer similar to the API gateway moment that happened in the microservices era. Same thing needs to happen here. Hence, governance is important. We also had like situations where Uber CTO came out to the public and said in one of the talks that he gave that they're already out of their AI budget for the year, and you do not want those things to happen with your systems. And if you do not want that to happen, you would want to have the governance first mindset when you're building anything for production. So that calls for an AI governance layer in the AI era, basically.
Okay. So I guess on that note, like when in this new AI era, what starts breaking when companies don't have AI governance figured out?
Yeah, like I said, a simple example would be your agent is working for you, you're happy with the ROI, the quality is good, but you do not have limits in place. You do not want to work towards optimizing your LLM, like starting from a very expensive LLM to working towards a smaller LLM that gives the same output. If you do not have governance in place, if you do not have tracking in place, if you do not have LLMs defined, LLM tracking defined, you would not know how much spend is happening around LLMs. If you don't know how much you're spending, you do not know how much budget to allocate, and then you see how the loop like basically it's a snowball effect. You would not want that to happen. If there is no governance, there is no way for you to track this new dimension that got added to the production systems now, which is LLM usage, and a new concept got added, which is tokens, right? So previously we were just tracking number of requests, total number of requests per second, per minute, per day. Accordingly, you allocated budgets for your infrastructure. You had your team planning, your hiring, team sizes grew based on whatever allocation you did before. But same thing if you do not do for LLM usage, which can spike up very, very fast. Because everyone wants AI and LLMs as part of the systems, and if there's no governance built on both mindset of the builder and also as a company, if you're not enforcing it, it gets very, very, very difficult for you to define how much money was spent. Was there any return on investment or not? Basically, that's very, very important to define governance and track evaluation, success metrics, etc. from day one.
Okay. And let's switch a little bit to the model problem. So one thing I keep hearing about is that companies can't rely on just one model anymore. Why is managing multiple AI models suddenly become such a big challenge?
Yeah, so great question. So uh, I love blaming models too when the quality goes down. But the truth is, it's not a model problem always. So think of it this way: if you're building something, you want to derive value fast, prove that the concept works, and then sort of request for a bigger team within the organization and build a production system out of it. During the POC phase, you would focus on quality and accuracy of the system, and therefore you will end up using a very big model. Let's assume you have GPT 5.5 with max thinking set, etc. You're getting great results. So quickly, you'll also realize this, and also we see this pattern with a lot of enterprises that we work with. Fortune 500 companies that we work with, that you do not always require a huge model to answer your questions. Let's say there is a system in healthcare that answers questions around FAQs. FAQs are same across like all the customers, all the patients. You would not necessarily need a very, very complicated model, a very, very big model that is also expensive in terms of time and money to answer these questions. You would maybe want to switch to a smaller model for these questions, whereas you would want these expensive and bigger models to answer complex questions, multi-intent questions. Right? So you would want to switch between multiple models to both answer questions fast, have a cheaper system in place, work towards an optimized manner. If you do not switch between models, you'll also lose out on the latest capabilities. Let's say you have a system built around GPT-4 maybe last year, and when GPT-5 came, you would want to switch some traffic to GPT-5 and see if you still are getting the right quality, and then maybe switch 100% traffic to the latest model, deprecate GPT-4 usage. Right, so you would always want to switch between models. To work towards an optimized system to get the best out of the latest technology, latest LLMs, etc. And also, multiple models will always give you the option of having failovers, fallbacks, and retry mechanisms. For some reason, GPT API went down or cloud went down, which is almost always the case nowadays with them moving very, very fast. You would want to have a second or third model as a fallback so that the end customer is not affected when an LLM goes down. So there are tons of benefits of having multiple models. You would want to switch between them to get the best out of them. You would want to have failovers. You would want to have fallbacks and retries, just so that your team gets the best out of it and the customers get the best out of it.
True. And you mentioned there's so many models these days. Like working in the AI industry in the news section, I can really tell that the AI space changes basically every single week. How are enterprises supposed to keep up with the definition of the best model when that changes constantly?
Yeah, the best model. I have a very opinionated answer here, which is best model is the one that works very well for your use case. For example, a lot of voice AI benchmarks show that a lot of builders still prefer using GPT-4o Mini because that gives the best latency returns. In voice, for example, it's important that the voice agent responds in less than 500 milliseconds. So 4o Mini is still preferred model, although it's like we've moved past GPT 5.5 and so. Um, the best model definition obviously will be very contextual. That said, for example, at TrueFoundry, we have a concept called virtual models where you just have a model called production model, for example, and the team can switch between GPT 5.5 and switch to GPT 5.6 when it comes out, etc., without the builders within the organization changing everything in their code. So, best model again depends on your context, and I also think it's not necessarily always dependent on the model. You also need to focus on the system that you build around the model to get the best output. Nowadays, you see the term agent harnesses coming into the picture. It proves that the system that you build around the model itself, memory, context management, switching between multiple models, etc., is more important than focusing on one model itself. So keeping up with the advancements is a tricky answer, but again, depends completely on the context in which they are operating.
It's a great answer. So I've been hearing the term MCP everywhere lately. For a little bit of context, for someone hearing that for the first time, what actually is MCP and why does it matter?
Yep. So few again going back to 2022 moment when ChatGPT came out, everyone started messing around with LLMs. LLMs are great at answering the questions on the data that they are trained upon. What if you want LLMs to access real-time data, the data that they are not trained upon? So then came the concept of function calling, which is now called tool calling, which is how do you empower an LLM with external information, basically the information that it never saw, or maybe the information that keeps on changing, which is real time data, right? So, tool calling is a concept that came in that said basically, let's say, if I ask questions like, what's the stock price of Nvidia today? What's the stock price of Tesla today? Or what's the weather in San Francisco? If you want to answer these questions, you would want an LLM to like go ahead, make an API call, get that information, and then synthesize and get an answer to the user. So tool calling solved the problem. Every model provider came up with their own tool schemas, and every library that helped in building these AI applications came up with their own schemas. And it became a mess, which is, as a builder, you get confused. There's no standard protocol of interacting with tools. MCP as a protocol came out to solve this exact problem by defining a client and server architecture, where MCP servers will define tools in a fixed format, in a predefined schema. MCP clients interact with MCP tools in a set format, like in a predetermined format, so that every LLM interacting with an external system has a standard way of talking. Example being HTTP solve the same thing with interacting with web. Or you have standard way of, like, let's say two humans speaking to each other had a standard way of talking in English, let's say, where there are grammar and rules. So MCP solved the problem of interacting with tools in a much standard manner, so that anyone building tools or anyone building agents with those tools can have one standard schema with which they can interact, basically. So MCP is very important in the sense that, again, you cannot again define value, or cannot necessarily gain anything out of just using the LLM as it is. You would want to have access, you would want to give the models the access to your internal systems, APIs, database, etc., by defining tools and letting the LLM choose which tool is necessary for what kind of user question. For example, if I ask a question around weather in SF, so the LLM is intelligent enough to invoke the tool that actually helps you get an information around San Francisco's weather and get back an answer. And if the question is not about weather, then it simply will return an answer. So LLMs are being trained to be better at tool calling, and empowering LLMs with MCPs and tools is important for you to create a production system, basically.
Okay. I feel like right now, as this conversation goes on, we can understand that there's a lot of moving parts right now when it comes to AI. So let's talk about the guardrails and security of it all. At what point do companies start realizing that they need these guardrails, security, and governance around AI instead of just letting employees experiment freely?
Right. Again, experimentation great with POCs, not great again with going to production, right? And the good thing with enterprises is that the first thing that they think about is how do I stay compliant? How do I make sure the systems are secure? So almost every enterprise that we work with are security first and guardrail first. Surprisingly good pattern that we would love to see in other customers as well, other builders as well. Guardrails comes first, by the way, in the hierarchy of building things. The first thing that they think about is how do I make sure that the system does not make mistakes. In terms of coming up with the right product design, how do I make sure that my agent does not say something that will put my compliance in risk? Healthcare and financial data, for example, you do not want to send PII data to the LLMs. You do not want to receive any data from LLMs that will cause problems. Like in healthcare, a popular example would be, hey, if I say, go to the agent and say, hey, I have a headache. You do not want your agent to respond with a medication suggestion, or just give you suggestion on how to solve the problem. You would want it to say that to go to a doctor or call 911 if you have an emergency, etc. So those are something that the industry together defined as a schema towards guardrails. Putting guardrails on input to the LLMs, input to the MCP servers, and also on output of the LLMs and output of MCP servers is extremely important if you want to stay compliant. Also, you would want to not give access to the LLMs, to systems basically that you do not want your LLMs to access. Basically, writing data, reading sensitive information from your emails, which is one of the worst things that you can do. Letting LLMs control your computer end to end, or deleting information, letting it delete information. So you would want to have give it secure access so that nothing malicious happens when agents are working on your task. So guardrails and security are the number one things that enterprises think about, and that's a very very good pattern, very very required pattern when you're building with agents.
Okay. And on the topic of mistakes and things you shouldn't do, what's a mistake you see companies making right now with AI that they probably don't even realize is a problem yet?
Um, Number one problem, if you ask me, would be the storage of data. Uh, the data, number one thing that you would encounter when you're building agents is to make the data agent ready or LLM ready. What I mean by that is data is scattered across multiple systems. You would want to build one context layer or one memory layer or one access layer, which will help the agent access the data to solve the user's question or work on the task itself. I believe all the companies should work towards a system where the data is LLM ready or agent ready, so that they can define the ROI faster. If you look at the way in which companies are moving, or if you see social media posts, etc., you see everyone wants to derive value faster than before, way faster than ever before. Any system that used to take like a team of 10 people to build in 6 months, you can do with half the team size and twice faster in lesser time, just because you have coding agents and LLMs, etc. here. So you would also want to make sure that the data that you want your agent to use to work on user questions and tasks to be agent friendly and LLM friendly. You would want to build systems like central context layer, central memory layer, etc. Anyone who worked with enterprises would realize that the first thing that they end up solving, the 50% of the task, is to make sure that the data is ready and not scattered across. And it can be structured data, unstructured data, it can be across multiple databases, multiple organizations, etc. So that's number one thing that I would suggest enterprises to work towards, which is to build one central memory layer and make the data agent ready.
Okay. So I would love to talk a little bit about TrueFoundry. So we've set the stage of what the problems are, what's happening right now in AI. Where does TrueFoundry play into this? What do you guys offer as a solution that somebody watching today can help implement into their daily life?
Yep. So TrueFoundry is an AI gateway platform. We help you connect your models, 1,000+ models across 100+ providers, to one central AI gateway layer, and let give you one API and one centralized API key to access your models, so that you don't have to share all kinds of various authentication methods with your team. Um, you can also connect MCP servers to the AI gateway and MCP gateway and define policies, enable disable tools, put in the policies like guardrails, budget limits, rate limits. Let's say that one of the popular use cases across enterprises that we see is you do not want access of, let's say, GPT 5.5, which is an expensive model in a lower environment and non-production environments. You can put policies like that. You could put team level policies where you can say team A does not get access to team B's models and vice versa. Um, it basically let you govern and scale with confidence and put your system in production and not worry about burning money without you knowing it. So TrueFoundry's AI Gateway sits at the central stack. It's basically at the central stack of your AI agents. We are soon launching applications around building your agents with TrueFoundry's platform, with like improving our latency, and then requests that flow through the AI Gateway. We only add like 2 to 5 milliseconds. So from day one, when you connect your models to TrueFoundry's AI Gateway and MCP servers to TrueFoundry's AI Gateway, you get governance and one dashboard to look at metrics, costs, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an amazing solution right now, especially when we set the stage of how crazy it is right now in AI and keeping up. So, when you look at the future with True Foundry in mind, what do you think AI infrastructure actually looks like 2 years from today?
So people just started thinking about allocating GPUs or thinking AI first and thinking about AI workloads. I think in the future it becomes a standard. It becomes a default way of thinking about applications, building with agents, etc. Previously, it used to feel like, oh, do we need an AI gateway? Do we need a governance layer for LLM applications? How many GPUs do I allocate? How do I think about on-prem deployments, etc.? In the future, you will see that to be a default way of thinking. LLMs will become just another part of building production systems, not a luxury, but a necessity most of the times. Compute will be important, and compute is becoming way more important than before. Models will become much more intelligent. Open models will become much more important. So that you can basically work on cost optimizations, etc. Infrastructure will basically change and become standard and work towards becoming more AI native or AI workload native.
Okay. And what is one thing about AI infrastructure or governance that you think most people completely misunderstand right now?
You would do not take AI spend for granted. A lot of people think, okay, I'm going to build a system, put it in front of users, and then think about tracking guardrails, putting in guardrails, or tracking my MCP usage, tracking my LLM usage. I would definitely recommend starting that from day one. You would want to make sure that the governance layer is in place from day one so that you don't burn your hands, you don't burn your budgets. Not everyone can afford to burn hundreds of thousands of dollars in production and then think about it later. I don't know anyone who does that. So if you do not want to end up in a situation where your budget is gone for the rest of the year and then you're just sitting and thinking of what to do, you would definitely want governance in place from day one. Have predictable outcomes in the uh, ever-growing, non-unpredictable world. You would want to have predictable outcomes in terms of your budget and LLM outputs. You would want to define ROI from day one. Yeah, that basically would be my number one thing to do, like going forward.
Amazing. Honestly, Sai, this was super valuable for me because I think a lot of non-technical people, including myself sometimes, we really only see like the surface layer of AI. But underneath that, there's actually an entire world of infrastructure governance, model management, security, and orchestration that companies are suddenly trying to figure out in real time. So, Sai, really appreciate you coming on and breaking this down in a way that actually makes sense. Where can people find you and learn a little bit more about True Foundry and your guys' solutions?
Oh, yeah, you can visit our website. You can just register. We have a very generous free tier, 50,000 requests in our free tier. More than happy to add more limits if you want to export the product more. We have a Discord channel that you can join, that you can ask questions. We have a growing community now. And then we all do a lot of offline events within San Francisco Bay Area, planning more. And we have an online contest coming up on June 1st, where you can build online resilient agents. We're doing it in partnership with AWS. We'll do more and more hackathons and workshops towards explaining how important governance is going forward. So find us on socials, register and make an account and try out the product. Join our Discord channel. Feel free to ask questions. More than happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you so much, Sai. I will also leave your guys' your website and anywhere else so that they can find more information below either this video or any clips that I post. So I can't thank you enough for coming on the channel today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jacob.
Have a great day. Thanks.